Hello. Welcome to my channel. And if you are a new subscriber, I welcome you. And if you are been subscribing to my channel, then thank you very much for the support. Today, my name is Hock Yeoh, and today I like to talk about a light warrior's perspective on the COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 has caused lots of confusion, chaos, and it also divided the people, and it resulted in many mortality and morbidity almost worldwide. I wish to put this into perspective from the uh, light warrior's point of view, and also including mine. Actually, I didn't want to comment on this COVID thing as I don't want to add to the confusion. However, someone need to put it some sort of perspective and in a nutshell, and so far, none had done so. Almost all who spoke just gave their point of view, be it medical or spiritual point of view. I will try to bring some sort of yin-yang balance here. And in fact, I had stopped looking at the COVID thing long time ago, but there had been many people who are confused and have fear instilled into them about the situation. So I hope to provide a little bit of answers here in a nutshell. Both the medical experts and light workers and light warriors have differing opinions. So you can see the amount of confusion there is. The medical experts are divided into two groups. And these are basically those who say it is due to a virus, and those that challenge the diagnostic tests. And so this are making the lay community very confused. Now, although there are different opinions, I'll try to bring them together. The medical experts are, as I say, divided into two main groups. And then basically, it's like those who say it is due to a virus and those who challenge the diagnostic test. Now, my investigation says that it is diagnostic for the present, for the most part, and the diagnostic tests are 80% accurate. And in my psychic investigations about these diagnostic tests, I have just about a 2.5% distortion into my investigations. The second group of medical experts, particularly from the latest meeting in the held in Europe by the European pathologists, puts more confusion. And I find that their views are rather skewed. They are of the opinion that there is no virus, and the argument was that although the virus caused lung damage, interstitial tissue lung damage, it was the lung damage that killed the patients. But of course, what caused the lung damage in the first instance? So you must remember that there are several types of medical experts, and each with their own background of training. It's like there are pathologists, there are epidemiologists, and there are experts of internal medicine comprising the cardiologists, hematologists, nephrologists, hepatologists, and infectious disease experts. Now, when talking about opinion from medical experts, you must know that these several experts have their own training and their views are confined to their medical backgrounds. So it's very hard to take an overall point of view because these pathologists, they only study dead bodies and on those who died to find a cause. The epidemiologists look into the spread and the behavior of the disease, while the internal physicians are the clinical experts that deal in the treating of patients. So you can see the diverse medical opinions about these COVID cases. And all of them have their own views. But to me, we should listen to the clinicians. They are the forefront in the treatment of these patients, and therefore they carry the most weight in their opinion. So we go next to the question of the hydroxychloroquine situation. It is very interesting because there was a medical paper and it was published both in the Lancet and the New England Journal about the outcome of cases treated with hydroxychloroquine, in which they got some pretty good results. However, it was later withdrawn from the journal because the authors, I believe, were forced to admit that their study can no longer vouch, as they say, for the veracity of their data. And therefore, due to the unfortunate development, the authors request that the paper be retracted. But why? Now, before we explore the idea of why was these papers retracted from the medical journals, you must know how do you get your scientific paper accepted by a reputable journal. They go through a very stringent process. Experts from various fields will have to go through your paper, look at your stats, check on your calculation, on your argument, and on your evidences. And if the panel of editors who are experts in that particular field see that this paper has some qualities that can be, published in their journals, then only will the publication be allowed. So for the paper to be published, it has to go through these stringent processes. But then the journals decided to withdraw those papers. I wonder why. You got to think about this, because hydroxychloroquine is actually very cheap. And therefore, we are going into a conspiracy type of theory. Now let's look at this slide. The false news that 96,000 and 32 patients on 6 continents were at risk for lethal heart reasons when they were started on hydroxychloroquine, sent shock waves throughout the world. And immediately, many randomized controlled trials, both by the World Health Organization and elsewhere, were suspended. Now, this damage was really done because when the news that WHO had ordered countries to stop using hydroxychloroquine, clinical trials, such as being conducted by the US National Institute of Health, were canceled. And a very hostile press also frightened people from re-entering clinical trials that might have cleared it for use. And worst of all, those newly symptomatic people who were formerly benefiting from the early treatment with hydroxychloroquine are now progressing to phase 2 of the disease because the drug has been stopped. So this brings a lot of confusion to both the medical community and patients alike. Now, the Santa Monica cardiologist, Dr. Dan, reported on June the 18th that there was never controversy about hydroxychloroquine right until March the 20th. And he continues to say that we had data from China and from France well before that in February showing a significant benefit impact of hydroxychloroquine. Yet, you saw physicians, politicians, and journalists saying that hydroxychloroquine is all hype and it's all due to the president pushing it when President Trump tweeted about it. So this is unfortunate because if the trials had continued, I'm sure many more centers would establish once and for all the validity of using hydroxychloroquine, which is far, far cheaper than all the other kinds of antivirals. Anyway, this has to be brought up for your information, ladies and gentlemen. About face masks and social distancing, you know, I don't want really to go deeply into the pros and cons of face masks. But I just would like to point out that those who are into World Health Organization announcements, their announcement on the guidance on the use of face masks is that masks should only be used by healthcare workers, caretakers, or by those people who are sick with symptoms like fever and cough. Anyway, it's up really, I think it's up to the individual whether they want to use a mask or not. On the whole, for me, I must confess that I don't use it all the time, except when I do go into crowded places, even though the so-called social distancing is being practiced. And especially if you are going into cinemas, which is a far much smaller closed space than in the shopping malls. Now, let's look a little bit into social distancing. You know, a lot of emphasis has been on wearing a face mask, on social distancing and washing of hands. Um, with regards to washing of hands and using hand sanitizers, if you overdo use hand sanitizers, there are reports that the alcohol in the hand sanitizers itself can cause a lot of problems: skin irritation, alcohol absorption, and even the hands, when wet with the hand sanitizers and when near a flame, it can burst into fire. And a lot of people have suffered serious burns actually. And the vapors from the hand sanitizers, when they escape into a closed space, especially like a kitchen, and you light a fire, there had been uh, many reports of explosions and hand sanitizers that left in a car with the windows up in a hot, humid climate. And when they go into the car, somehow a spark uh, ensues and the whole car bursts into flames. And social distancing, as in this picture that I showed, uh, on the left is I believe a taxi driver or a Grab driver in Singapore using a plastic cover to isolate himself. Well, I really don't blame him because he's got passengers, all sorts, and in close proximity in a confined space, and it's okay. And a picture on the right, which shows social distancing, and it's something that we really got to think about because I'm quite concerned, especially when too much of emphasis on social distancing is done by the educationists in the kindergartens, especially those 4 or 5-year-old kids. It will have a very, very detrimental effect in later life because social distancing is actually a form of torture used by the CIA. Yeah. And next week, touch a little bit on vaccines. It's a huge topic, I must admit, but I'm just going to touch a little bit. Vaccines for COVID-19. Again, it's very difficult to discuss the details, and suffice for me to say that we just first remember some basics on vaccine production. Because if you know this, then you will realize that a fast-track vaccine production that is on the way by several countries is just not safe. Because in normal circumstances, a viable and so-called safe vaccine can only produce about 3 years, the fastest, because it has to go through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which is a clinical phase of trials with human subjects to see what happens and uh, 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 the safety of the vaccines concerned. And when you produce it by cutting short the protocols, it just isn't safe. Anyway, the recent history of other vaccines are also not very good. As many of you parents who have done lots of research would agree with me. So what are my recommendations? What are my thoughts on vaccines? And I'm only particularly now referring especially to the COVID-19 vaccine that is going to be made available. My recommendation is that the first generation and even the second generation of these vaccines against COVID-19 isn't going to be very safe, nor is it an answer really to stop the epidemic. The third generation may come out, perhaps much more safer, but however, by that time, I believe that the COVID pandemic will just mysteriously disappear as it mysteriously appeared. Okay? So that's my take on the vaccines. So, as you know, many businesses have suffered huge losses in revenue, and still many are being folded up or becoming bankrupt. They were forced to close for at least 3 months, and many of them could not cope with the situation. Take, for example, the Philippines. They had a lockdown, and recently only Duatate has opened up the economy because they just couldn't prolong the lockdown anymore. But when businesses were opened up recently, there were a lot of reports of new cases of COVID, which resurfaced. Likewise, in India, we know that in India, they had a sudden lockdown for 2 months. And again, the economy had to be opened because so much people have suffered, you know. And then there again, you get a lot of resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Melbourne had also been under lockdown again. It's a population of about 5 million or more. So you see, it is a tough, very, very tough decision by world leaders about whether to open up their economy, let businesses function as usual, or continue with lockdowns. But on the whole, I wish to point out that if you look deeply enough, this COVID has caused a lot of hardship to everyone, almost everywhere, with businesses going bankrupt, folding up. And if you want to have a rescue plan, which many governments are doing so to help the small and medium enterprises to survive. But in doing so, actually, you are getting more in debt. You are in modern slavery with mounting debts. Now you have to borrow from banks to survive. And if you are unable to repay the rescue plan, then the banks will take over your property. And you can see that this is the real end game. But the COVID-19 has another effect, as the way I see it, with the lockdowns. When it happened, the light forces had used the opportunity to make secret arrests of several cabal-related people. And there was not much news because of the lockdown. And so these two forces, the light and the dark, are always taking advantage of the situation. So what I want to say is this COVID-19 has got huge impact, deep meaning, and we must see the meaning behind all these things. But let's say, okay, let's try an experiment. Let's try to fake a pandemic, because to those who say that it's all fake, I believe it's very hard to fake a pandemic. That means every country almost being affected. Let's say we want to fake a pandemic and we call it devil's fever and try to spread rumors about it without using any infectious agent. I don't think you can even fake it onto your next door neighbor to get the devil's fever. So it is not easy to fake a pandemic which affects many countries at almost the same time unless you have an agent. So now let's go back to the COVID-19 pandemic. I won't try to talk about how it happened or whether it was planted or whether it was, biological warfare on China, etc. Let's not go into that because it will take hours of discussion. But what I want to say was, when the pandemic started earlier on, I had the opportunity to talk to Unimatrix when I was interviewing Dr. Koso out. And in that interview, I was given the opportunity to represent humanity and talk to the entity behind the COVID-19. And I only managed one little thing because it was so difficult to negotiate with the entity known as COVID-19. What I managed to do is just to ask the entity to confine its attack to just fulfilling of karmic situations. Otherwise, it seems that it would ravage humanity without any reservations. And this actually was later confirmed by two light warriors, Etienne Chalon and Marco. So right now, the situation, as you can see, has again resurfaced, especially so like in many other countries. And well, the latest stats is here, as you can see. Of concern, of course, is the United States, then comes Brazil, and then India and Russia. So what's happening now of the resurgence and the increased cases of coronavirus infection and mortality, you must understand this is now very much karmic based. When the COVID-19 was ravaging in countries like China, I was wondering about the situation of India, Africa, and South America. And I investigated it, and I come to know that India would later be caught up in this epidemic. So will Africa and South America. Of course, I didn't expect US to be leading in the latest statistics of mortality and morbidity. What happened in US actually caught me by surprise. So the here in this slide, I have already actually discussed it. Now, I think that the Indian subcontinent, the countries in the Indian subcontinent will continue to be greatly affected by the COVID-19 cases. South America and even Africa. We don't get much news about Africa because the news coming out from Africa isn't that much. And then all these places, they will have a second wave, and it's happening now in the US. And do keep a watch on President Trump, because this man, I believe, has got lots of information about the COVID situation. But of course, he could also be just a puppet, under orders from people who control him. Then finally, I just like to finish off with talking about the best way is to improve your immune system. Make sure you have proper good nutrition and not just junk food. Make sure you have sunlight to make natural vitamin D, and exercise, of course, should be there when you're allowed. And now we should also think about prayers, and I believe prayers would help a lot. So have some supply of vitamin C and vitamin D. And I also had in a previous video showed you a Taoist way of improving your immune system, and which I'm going to teach you again now for those who have missed it. And actually, this is the one of the aims of this short video is to show you how to improve your immune system against almost any other infectious diseases. Here, you take off 5 fingers, put it in this manner, and you thumb your sternum or your chest, and you just have to say golden light prevents, golden light prevents, golden light prevents, golden light prevents. This helps a lot because when you thumb your sternum, you're actually activating your thymus, which is your immune system, which plays an important role in your immune system. And golden light prevents is the mantra that accompanies this. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to introduce this Taoist method of improving your immune system for almost any kind of infectious diseases, common colds or whatever. Just remember to do it as often as you can, and it will definitely improve your immune system. So with this little short video and a small perspective and roundup about COVID-19, we should try to keep it as short as possible because there's no point talking too much. And as far as statistics are concerned, if you are very interested in large number of statistics, and actually you can look into the video or the interview by James Rink on Super Soldier Talk with Etienne Charlon and Marco. They give you detail and lots of statistics. So with this, I thank you for your time. And once again, take care and all the best and keep healthy.